Hello and welcome back to our weekly geekly podcast, Talking TV with my mum. Name subject to change. It's been a while since we were last here with you. The first podcast went up several weeks ago, and since then we've had lots and lots of technical issues. So it's prevented us from actually being able to get anything recorded, mostly on my end, issues with my recording equipment and things like that. But it seems like, things are okay at the moment, touch wood, so we thought we'd dive back in. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my co-host of the podcast. So hello there, Mum.
Hello, Dom.
How you doing?
Glad to be back.
Yes,
finally.
It's been a bit of a sort of disjointed period, hasn't it? Because we did obviously the first recording, we got that sorted. Took me a little while to get it all together and everything, but once it went up, it seems to have gone down quite well, and then we just weren't able to get back into it.
No, spent a lot of time trying and then failing. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed. So we've made a decision just off the bat. So in the first pilot episode, one of the things we talked about near the beginning of the show was Titans. Now, we managed to cover the first 5 episodes, and there was still, obviously, another, 7, 8 episodes left or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
7, I think it was.
7 or 8. So what we decided to do was we're going to forego talking about the rest of them as part of this podcast, but we are going to record a separate podcast where we will just cover the remainder of Titans. Seeing as Titans isn't back until potentially the end of this year, we thought we'll focus on the programs that are on now, and we'll do a separate recording to do with Titans, and we'll put that up as a separate thing just on its own. So if you've come here for Titans, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. So today we're going to discuss Walking Dead, Flash, Arrow, and Star Trek from this week that's just gone or is just going, depending on when you're listening to this. And before we get started, I will just say, if you're a new subscriber or a new person to the channel even, please subscribe. If you're a returning person, then thank you very much for coming back. And we just want to both say thank you to those of you that have viewed the podcast in the last couple of weeks, because I think my last check, Mum, I think it was up to 34 views.
Wow.
So it's I think it's the second highest video on my channel at the moment.
Excellent.
So that's not bad. And the fact that it's been quite a few weeks since it was put up, and yet we've still continued to get more views on it, even though technically what we're talking about is kind of out of date now.
Yeah, that's why we were so angry that it all messed up, because it was doing well and then we couldn't carry on. So we missed a bit, but hopefully we're back on track.
So please subscribe if you haven't. Please leave us a like on the video so that we know that we're doing the right thing. And comments and feedback would be great. We'd love to get some engagement with you listening at home or watching at home, because then that way we can sort of throw that into the podcast as well. If we can sort of have a look through the comments, if there's any good points of conversation, we can bring them up and we can then discuss them and respond to you. We can actually respond to you, so we can interact with you. So if you want a chance to be on the podcast, technically, then chuck stuff down in the comments box. It'd be great to get conversation going. Right, okay, so that's all the housekeeping done. So let's get on and talk about what are we talking about first?
Walking Dead.
Okay, Walking Dead. So
right.
Walking Dead came back after its however long it was off for.
Mid-season finale.
Yeah.
Ended with Jesus being killed by a person masked as a walker.
Yes.
They're nicknamed the Whisperers.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that episode, Negan also escaped out of his cell.
Yes, that's right.
Right. So we picked up where at the end of it picked up exactly where it ended.
Mm-hmm.
So they managed to drag Jesus out of the cemetery and fight off the zombies, and locked them into the cemetery. But they managed to undo the gate.
Yeah, that's right.
Which was thinking that's obviously not the zombie; it's a whisperer. Mm-hmm. Then we panned on to Negan having a good look around the place. I thought that was hilarious because obviously Judith got him. I like their little chat they had.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
That's great. I mean, she's just so funny. I mean, she's such a sassy little kid. And I just love the fact that there's him. He's like trying to climb over the fence, and she's just there, and she's just got the gun on
Yeah.
him, and she's just like, I will shoot you. And
She,
she just doesn't care. It was just brilliant. But what's brilliant as well is him. He's brilliant
mm,
too because for everything that we went through with him as a villain in the past and stuff, there was always that element of charmingness. There was always that element of he quite likes kids. He's good with kids. He had that thing with Carl, and now he's got this similar thing with her. He's got
yeah,
this
yeah,
very interesting relationship. It's almost like when you see things where he's the bad uncle that is bad, but you can't help but love him because he's a little bit charming
yeah.
and he's got a glint in his eye. It's that sort of dynamic between them of like, I know you're an asshole, but you're my uncle sort of attitude.
It's like she goes, "What's that you have there?" And also noticed he had the compass.
Yeah.
And she looked at him. It's so funny because like, she let him have it, and then she sort of let him go,
Mhm.
like with a warning, and almost thinking, "You're not going to last long, but yeah, go then if you want to."
Yeah.
And he just sort of like went, thinking, "Okay, off I go,"
And
which
the
is
way it
quite
was like,
hilarious.
and if I see you again, I will shoot you. And he's
Yeah.
like, I bet you will. Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything less, kind of thing.
Yeah. Anyway, so then we went back to Hilltop where they were worried that Michonne and that haven't come back, so they decided to send Luke and the other guy the new guy, isn't it? Or was Luke the new guy? The two guys that went looking for Michonne and that. I can't
No,
remember
it's
what his name was.
the guy, the one with the beard,
Yeah, big guy.
that's all like into music and things like that. Yeah, I forget
Yeah,
what his name, because they're still relatively new characters. I haven't really
yeah.
got all their names down
Well,
pat
they
yet.
sent
But
them off out looking for them. Obviously, in the meantime, they were heading back, weren't they?
mhm,
Daryl and the gang. But they were being tailed by the zombie whisperers. Like, I'm calling the
mm,
zombie whisperers now.
the zombie whisperers.
And then
It's like
after a bit,
somebody,
after,
somebody that can talk to zombies, like a horse
yeah,
whisperer.
yeah, like a horse whisperer, zombie whisperer. It's my new thing. Like Mad Dog is a new thing.
Yeah.
Zombie whisperers. Yeah, so then obviously got into a fight and then managed to catch one of them, which
Mhm.
was some young girl.
Yes.
Oh, they got a live one.
Yeah, so that was in the underpass. It was like a tunnel or something that they went through,
Yeah,
and they had a fight in there, didn't they? Is that right?
yeah, that's right. There was more than one whisperer, wasn't there? But they killed one of them, and then this girl, they caught her, didn't they? Michonne
Mhm.
pulled her mask off. They thought,
Yeah, that's right.
take her back, and so we can find out what's going on here.
Yeah.
Um, they yeah. There was then they sort of cut to Negan, and to me, he looked like he wished he wasn't out there. He wasn't
Mm.
very like he saw the zombies again, and then it's like, oh, why, what have I done? Why am I out? Why am I out here?
But didn't he end up like through the course of his journey, he ended up losing stuff because he lost the what did he have when he left
He had a
them? When he
bag,
left
and he had
Alexandria?
a bag, and when he was fighting the zombies outside, he had lots
Yeah.
of supplies, and that all was covered in zombie crap. So
Mhm.
he didn't have that, so he lost that, and then his shirt got ruined, so he
Yeah.
ripped the shirt off, and basically he had
And the
but next to
compass.
yeah, no, he had
Didn't he end up dropping the
no,
compass in the end? Didn't that
I think
fall
he
on the
kept
ground?
no, I think he kept the compass.
I
I
thought
think
at some point it got pulled off him and it like the camera lingered on the ground to show that had been
I'm not
dropped or
sure. I'm not
something.
quite sure. But yeah, so I think he realised like because he obviously the way he'd been living his life in the last few years we'd seen him, he
Hmm.
wasn't doing anything with the zombies. Everyone else was the ones going out and getting rid of the zombies,
Yeah.
or that he had the zombies in his compound, didn't he? So to him,
Mhm.
this was all like, oh God, I've got to do this all again. I forgot about this life.
Yeah.
Not very pleased. But anyway, so that was what we saw of him, and then it went back to is it Alex? No, Hilltop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it Hilltop? Yeah. So they all appeared back, um, which everyone was really happy about to see them, but then sad to realise that Jesus has been
Jesus was
killed,
dead.
and the fact that those guys have gone out looking for them for nothing now.
Mm.
So it's like, what? Eugene is obviously a bit sweet on Rosita.
Yeah. Well, he has been. He was like going
Well,
back
yeah,
though.
even more so though. It looked like he was sort of, but then found out that she's pregnant,
Hmm.
but it's not with the priest baby. It's with the doctor. Apparently, she had a fling with that doctor guy.
Yeah. So it's like, when is this supposed to have happened?
But it must have been in the like between the jump, mustn't it? She said
Yeah.
before the. So yeah, that was really strange.
So yeah. So we're going to have another child being brought into the world of the Walking Dead potentially.
Yeah, potentially. So it's like, oh, okay, that's a bit of an eye opener.
Hmm.
They then panned back to Negan, who went back to his old home, the Sanctuary. He was
Yes.
having a look around, and there was an old motorbike. That wasn't Daryl's motorbike. That's a different motorbike, wasn't it? It looked like
Yeah. That was.
Daryl's, but yeah.
It was just one of the
And,
ones that they used to have, like Dwight and stuff used to go out on motorbikes, didn't they?
and he was so pleased to find Big Richie, the zombie. Oh my days, yeah. So it was quite hilarious because obviously he was. Then all these zombies, the bit where all the zombies appeared, and he killed everyone, but he wouldn't kill Big Richie. He's like, Big Richie, you
Mm-hmm.
got to keep with me, because he was convinced in himself. He was getting it all arranged, going like, "Am I right? I'm here now." And then he sort of woke up to the fact, thinking, "What am I doing?
Yeah.
Just me here and that one zombie, Big Richie, outside." So in the end, he
Mm.
killed him as well, didn't he? And I thought, yep, he's going up back, methinks. And I thought, yeah, that's where he's going. He's thinking she knew I was going to end up coming back because there's nothing out there for me now.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought, I bet he's on his way back to see. So yeah, so he off he went, and then who did he meet on his road back? On his motorbike,
Mm.
Judith.
Yeah.
Shot him off his bike,
Like
and
she
so
said she was going to.
so. And when he swore, she went, "Language, I'm a kid, arsehole." He said like crap or something. I don't know what he said. And she went,
Yeah.
"Language, I'm a kid, arsehole."
I know, it's brilliant. So funny.
Oh, she's so funny. So like, yeah, I'm coming. I'm on my way back. And then obviously after that bit, they showed the two guys out looking for the Michonne and things,
Hmm.
and they kept finding arrows.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
In the trees and things like that.
He seemed to know who they were, whose the arrows were, didn't he?
Hmm.
That big guy from, the new guy.
Yeah, it was one of the girl that's in his group.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It must be. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know you mean. Yeah. So now they're in danger now because they're after them, aren't they? They're surrounded by, and they all seem to be the whisperers, don't they?
Yeah.
They're not zombies. They're whisperers. They look
Well,
round and they're
yeah,
all real people stood round them, so
the
with
fact that
with
one of
zombie
them pulled
faces.
out a shotgun,
Yeah.
that's clearly not a normal zombie, is it? Because they
Yeah.
don't tend to go around
What
wielding
did she say?
shotguns.
What did she say? The woman said something, didn't she?
I didn't actually catch what she said.
No, I didn't. I can't remember what she said. She said something
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that must be. Maybe that's the mother of that girl." Because when the girl was taken back to the hilltop, they had her in a
Yes.
cell, and she was claiming it was just her and her mum. First, she said there was only a few of them and they were all dead. No, it's just her and her mum. Daryl wasn't having any of it. I mean, he really wanted to finish her off, but I think if that boy hadn't been in the cellar, what's his name, Carol's boy, if he hadn't
Henry.
been in the cell down there, he might have lost his rag with her.
Yeah, because we jumped over that part completely.
Yeah,
So that was the other thing. When they got back to Hilltop with the body of Jesus, and everybody was upset, and that they were like, right, we got one of theirs. We're going to question them. And yeah, Daryl was sort of trying to take the role of Rick and get to the bottom of things, but obviously Daryl's Daryl, so he was doing it in the Daryl way. She, like you said, she was saying that giving them all, spinning them loads of lines. And then eventually, Henry being in that other cell worked to their benefit because by him being young as well, and he was trying to be nice to her, you're a scared girl and this, that, and the other, and got her talking, which then allowed them to find out more stuff.
because Daryl was outside listening, wasn't he?
So we found out I think her name's Lydia, and he was obviously bonding with her. So yeah, Daryl was like, oh, okay, this is kind of useful having
I'll
that
leave him
kid
in
there.
there, and then hopefully he'll find out some stuff about her. She'll just
Mm,
see, well, he's in prison, I'm in prison, so we're in the same boat. Maybe that's why he turned around to him and said, "You're staying in here longer than you thought."
yeah.
Thinking, I'm going to say that because then I don't want her to know he's just in there for being a naughty boy rather than he's a prisoner, if you know what I mean. So it's
Mm,
very clever because obviously Michonne had told him, you know what you have to do. Basically, she was saying, get rid of her, kill her.
yeah.
But then, he wanted to, and then he thought better of it. So that's worked out
Mm.
well in their favour. So hopefully we'll find some information about what's going on with the rest of them.
So, I mean, I think, to be honest, in my opinion, it was a very by the numbers episode back. I think it was a kind of, okay, we've had a break. Here's the picking up from the cliffhanger of us all being surrounded in the graveyard. And then it was just a bit of, let's lay a bit of foundations, because we had, obviously, the cliffhanger in the graveyard. We also had the whole, Negan's got out of his cell thing.
Yeah.
So it was just paying off those things. It wasn't really doing anything new, apart from obviously them capturing the girl and bringing her back. It was, it was a good episode back, but I mean, it wasn't like, wow, that was
No,
like
it
such
wasn't
an
mega good.
amazing
It was
episode.
just, yeah, it was just like keep like
Setting things
updating
up.
us. Yeah, set the scene. I mean, obviously, because Negan had to get out of the cell because he had to nip and go into one of my other geek programs, Supernatural, for a big episode, and then obviously thought, well, I can go back to the cell now because that's done.
Yes,
Shout out to the Supernatural fans.
I've been in one episode, so now I can return to The Walking Dead. Although, like, there's that weird fan theory that they're both the worlds of Supernatural and The Walking Dead are all connected anyway. But so
Anyway,
yeah,
so that was that.
the
That's a roundup
the
for that one. Going forward, now we're going to find out some more. So hopefully next week we'll have more cool stuff to talk about.
yeah, the other thing I was just going to say is that obviously ending with those two guys being captured. Now, I'm guessing that group of whisperers is going to have maybe been somewhere, or maybe they have like. I mean, we still don't know how their society works. So whether they have like patrols and they're like, oh, well, this group didn't clock in on time. They didn't return when we were expecting them, sort of thing. So they went out looking and they found the bodies, and then maybe they discovered there's one missing. So when they speak to these two, they're going to be like, you've got one of ours, kind of
Especially
thing.
if the girl is the woman's daughter.
Hmm.
So that's not good because obviously then she's going to be hunting them down more so now because she wants to find the daughter.
Well,
The
I think
agenda's change a little bit more.
we're gonna get more, because we just don't want to stretch it out. And then we won't have that many more really, because I think there's 16 episodes this year. Next week's one is episode 10.
Yeah.
So we've literally got that episode, and then we'll have 6 more, and then that'll be it. And then we'll have
But
to wait until October again.
the Fear of the Walking Dead should be back, so we'll have that to add in.
Yes, that's true. And do you want to know another character's jumped ship?
Ooh.
Somebody that we haven't seen for a while, so it's not a current character, but a character that was in The Walking Dead is going to be in Fear the Walking Dead. I don't know in what capacity or anything like that, but what's his name? I mentioned his name previously when we were talking about the Saviors and the motorbike gang. Dwight.
Right, is he still alive?
Yeah, remember Daryl let him go.
Oh, let him go. Oh, wow, that'd be cool.
So that's going to be interesting, how that's all going to work. But yeah, they
Oh,
made
they're on
that
the same
announcement.
timeline, so they'll have had to have a time jump as well if they're keeping up with the timeline.
But I don't think they are. I think they're going to be behind again now. I don't think they jumped again when The Walking Dead jumped. So it's going to be
For
like a
him going
2-year gap.
into it, it'd be just after the
After he left,
overrunning of
yeah.
Negan, yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see for that one. That's not this time, though.
Hmm.
Now we move on to the next one.
Right, okay, so next is Arrow.
Right, so, so, because obviously last week we had Laurel, who's Earth 2 Laurel, being sought by a crazy man. This week it's Dana seems to be being stalked, and then it's turned out that it's actually stalking all of them.
Yeah.
Which is totally different from what we had originally predicted.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. So they've all got these letters. The only one that seems to have not had a letter was Oliver and
Curtis.
Curtis, yes. So I was like, okay, well, I don't know why Curtis, but obviously we find out why Oliver, but we don't know why Curtis. Anyway, so we have the little family setup where the William is being a typical teenager, hating his parents and everything, and apparently he was expelled for fighting. He was just like a typical teenager, wasn't he? Really, aren't you?
But he also kind of blamed it on Oliver, didn't he? Because he was like, "Well, you taught me to fight, and you taught me to stand up for myself."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I don't mean like that, like all the time. I don't mean use it to get into fights. It's more self-defense."
Yeah, that's it. But he was just like a typical teenager, though, wasn't it? Really. Um, right. So then we skip to the future team, who are struggling to find some information. The information they want isn't on that. They got all those codes, didn't they?
Yes.
And they don't seem to be able to find what they want. So they decided to go look at what made them go to the old lair to look for the stuff.
They needed to get access to, didn't they say about the Archer program? If we can get into the Archer program, that'll give us access to satellites and this, that, and the other. So that sort of made them think that if they went to the Arrow bunker, because they needed to find, oh wait, hold on, no, it was something to do with the girl, Black Star. And they were on about the the Archer program, whatever this is, and they mentioned about the girl and about finding out where she was, this Black Star, the one that we saw the week before, who's a cage fighter.
Now we know the name.
And they just did some sleuthing to try and work out, right, we'll pinpoint her location, and they went to the Arrow Cave. But then they were blindsided because then her and Connor Hawke sort of took them by surprise and ended up like capturing them all.
Yeah. Because obviously we knew they were there from the end of the last one, didn't we? Right, so then we flip back to present day again. Curtis has decided he doesn't want to work with Argos anymore. And obviously Diggle's trying to persuade him otherwise, but he says, no, it's not what I want to do anymore.
Yeah.
And he's trying to convince him, oh, we'll offer you this, that, and the other. Have a think about it. Obviously, in the meantime, somebody gets killed. Somebody drugs somebody and then kills them. And who's some guy who worked with Diaz.
Yeah, he was a counsellor, like on the Star
One of
City.
his inside guys, yeah.
City Council or whatever.
But obviously, at the time when they did the post-mortem didn't show the drugs up that had been put in the system. Which then they were.
So they were doing they wanted to then do it like an analysis on it, didn't they?
Yeah. They actually didn't know anything that time, did they?
About what?
What the drug was that was being used.
No, that's why they obviously were trying to analyse what it was, and there'd been this thing, because they'd said about previous like body drops and things that had happened, and this name, obviously the Star City Slayer, but that's kind of all they knew at that point.
Yeah. Was that why, was it Dana that rang up Barry's boss?
Yeah, because she said it was the similar MO to something that when she had worked in Central City and she'd been undercover, there'd been a whole thing there, and she said it's very similar MO to something I dealt with back then. So if I ring Captain Singh and pick his brain about that time, then it should help us, give us a bit more intel.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, it's quite cool, though. Barry's boss, yeah. Yeah, obviously, obviously I'm trying to do it as I saw it, but obviously it's a bit difficult because obviously we're backwards and forwards. So in the present day, William's grandparents turned up at Oliver's and decided that they want custody of him because they don't think he's based on him being in prison and all the stuff he's doing. And
well, because didn't William call them?
Very... Yeah, well, obviously we found out that's why. I mean, it was obvious, wasn't it? Because why do they suddenly turn up at the door? He's already rebelling and moaning at everybody at home. So they're now saying they want to take him away, which Oliver's not very happy about. I mean, we may as well just round that bit off because that part basically, it turned out that they decided he will go to the grandparents, but they weren't very happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
So Team Arrow went on a hunt, and Curtis was freaked out, and they said we'll split up, and he said, "Hey, do you watch horror films? You never split up."
And this whole section was just like something out of a horror movie,
It
wasn't it?
was,
When
wasn't
they were
it?
trying
It was
to
scary.
find the layer of the Star City Slayer, it was so, it was like a setup from a typical like scary movie slasher horror type thing. It was so funny.
Yeah, like opening things and turning around
Yeah,
and
like
seeing things.
there was the thing, a music box.
Yeah, that was thing. Mad Dog,
Yeah, Wild Dog.
Wild Dog. Sorry, Wild Dog.
Oh, just a quick thing. I will say you're not the only one that does that.
Okay.
There is another, obviously, people listening and watching are probably aware, AfterBuzz TV, who do a lot of these like review shows after every episode. One of their panelists, nearly every week without fail, she calls Wild Dog Mad Dog. So I was like, it's not just Mum. She is not on her own in getting the name of a character mixed up. So you're not on your own there.
How bizarre.
Mm. So anyway.
Yeah, so he looked in the cupboard and saw the music box, and then he shut the cupboard, and then he turned around and he got freaked out because Curtis was behind him. And then he goes, "What was that?" And I thought, was there something else? I thought something had appeared that wasn't in there when he said, "What was that?" There was something
Yeah.
behind him. Then he opened it again, and there was a slab side uniform.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, obviously someone from the prison. And then, then Dana,
Diner.
Canary woman.
Diner, like as in like where you eat.
Oh, is that her name? I thought her name was Dana.
No,
Okay,
Diner.
Dinah saw the pinboard where he had all the pictures.
Dinosaur.
Ha ha ha.
Dinosaur.
No pun intended. Uh, I've lost my train of thought. Behave.
Sorry.
Anyway, so she saw the board with all the pictures on that whoever the weirdo was, like, been trailing them all.
And it was a typical serial killer like murder board, wasn't it? Of
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
here are all the people and here are the strings connecting them, and
yeah.
like circles round people's faces and all of this lot.
And then she realised someone was behind her, turned round, and it was that little weird, annoying guy from the prison.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
was
what's
always
his name?
stalking
Stanley.
Oliver. Yeah, and then he slit her throat. I went, no.
Ah, that was a
What?
shock, wasn't it?
I thought I didn't hear she was. I thought she can't die because she's in the future. So I knew she didn't die, which was a bit of a pain. It was her, really, because obviously you're going, she didn't die because she's in the future. Flash forwards.
But, yeah. The thing about her having her throat cut though is that although we're like, oh no, stuff, and obviously they did save her. They were able to cauterize the wound and stuff when they found her, but in the future, because like you said, obviously she hasn't died. We know she's in the future, but we haven't seen her use the canary cry. So, is it possible that him cutting her throat, although they saved her life, she's now no longer got her ability to do a like sonic scream thing? Maybe he damaged her vocal cords or something.
Yeah, because she hasn't used it yet, has she?
No.
So yes, maybe.
So we'll have to wait and see, but yeah, that was a thought I had at the time. I was just like, oh, maybe that's why we haven't really seen
I didn't
that.
think of that actually until you said it.
So yeah, so there was that. So then they saved her, and then the next thing
was Back to the Future.
That's right, yeah. So we flipped back, and they obviously had them captured. They were tied up. We didn't know where all the others were at the time, but we saw Zoe and William tied to chairs, and obviously Black Star came along, and she was just being really.
She hit the girl, didn't she? And William was getting really annoyed with her.
Yeah, and she was quizzing them basically. Why are you here? What are you doing here? And like saying with him, you're not a hero. You're like a rich boy and all this lot. And that's when he revealed basically, I'm looking for Felicity or information about Felicity because she's my mom, because Black Star had made some crack about, oh, she's your girlfriend, or did you two have a thing or something? He's like, oh,
Yeah,
gross. And
it's
then,
my mum, my stepmom.
yeah, and then he said, anyway, I'm gay. So that was, obviously he said he was gay. He said that Felicity was his mum. That took her by surprise. And then they then
We
had
saw
a,
the other lot in another room and they got out.
yeah, and then they had a big, like, fight sequence where they were, like, throwing knives to each other and stuff. And William got, Roy pushed William down the stairs, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's like, brace yourself, kid. And he sort of, like, pushed the chair and William went flying. But then he was able to free himself. And then they had, like, a Mexican standoff because he pulled a gun on Black Star. And then that's where it kind of cut away from there and went back to the present day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And then we had Oliver and family having a nice chili. I think it was chili.
Yeah.
And the boy said he wasn't interested in anymore. And he was saying it's too hot. And then Felicity said, I'll have some more if you could pass it to me. And he goes, I can't move. And then they all realised any of them couldn't move.
Mm. And then
that guy came in.
Yeah, we saw the smoke coming through, like, from under the door and stuff like that. And then the door opened and somebody came in a mask. And then they were all sort of looking over. And then he took the mask off and it was Stanley. And he was like, hey, Oliver, my best friend.
Oh. Yeah, he'd been abused by his own father or something.
Yep.
Something similar was done to him where he was immobilised so he couldn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was it he said about his brother? Did he kill his brother or his brother died or?
Yeah, I think he said he killed him, didn't he? And that was like, wasn't that like his first victim?
Yeah.
And that's
and
what.
then he was.
Go on.
He was. Sorry, he was taunting them.
Yeah.
And Felicity was biting back all the time.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, obviously Oliver was signalling to the boy, try and in a minute, slide that bottle across to me. But then he carried on. And then he turned on Oliver, didn't he? And said, maybe I shouldn't save you either.
Well, yeah, because to begin with, he was kind of like, it was like, he's obsessed with Oliver. He's like, I'm the only one that understands you, and I had to take out all those the people that claim to be your friends because they don't really understand you. They're not really your friends, so I had to, to deal with them. And it was this all kind of like weird sort of, almost like he was kind of in love with Oliver, like we can be together sort of thing. And then that's why he was like, take out Felicity because she's no good for you. And then because Oliver wasn't reciprocating and Oliver was like, just being hostile towards him, he was then like, oh, well, maybe you're not the person I thought you were. And then he got really angry. Oh, and the other really interesting thing that we have to throw in there, though, yet again, we got more Batman-related references, because he mentioned about how when he was younger, and they're like psychological problems, and they wanted to put him in Arkham Asylum.
Arkham Asylum again, yeah. We get to mention a lot, actually, lately.
Yeah, so, I mean, since they've announced this whole Batwoman thing, and they had her in the crossover and stuff, they're really throwing in all of these. We can talk about Gotham now, and we can talk about all these things to do with Batman-related stuff, so...
Yeah.
So that was yet another one. And yeah, he turned on Oliver, but luckily the poison drug thing had kind of worn off enough that with the distractions, William was able to grab that bottle that was sat in front of him on the table.
Yeah, he slid it down to Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
Who then... Well, did he break it and then throw it at him?
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously got... I thought he killed him. I thought, oh, Arrow's killed again. But he hadn't. He got done enough to, immobilise him. But, phew, it was quite... Yeah, I can relax again now.
Yeah.
And then obviously the guys came to the rescue as well, didn't they? Because they realised that Oliver was one that hadn't had a target.
Yeah.
Yeah, once they got Dana sort of took to the hospital, they were like, he hasn't even been targeted. That means he's the one he's after.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily they realised that and came to the rescue. Which was like, yay!
And then
Curtis decided he was going to leave.
Yeah, that's right.
He was going to take Diggle up on his offer.
Yeah, so obviously they sent the guy back to prison. William decided to go and live with his grandparents, and Curtis decided, no, I've made my mind up. I'm going to take a job in Washington, D.C. So yeah, so he's leaving the team.
And he signed Helix, or it's called, over to Felicity.
Yes, that's right. Yep. So that makes you wonder as well. You know, in the future, they mention about the fact she has Smoke Industries.
Mm,
Whether that's how that will come to pass, because now she's been signed over the whole Helix thing, that will eventually evolve into Smoke Industries in the future.
yeah, yeah, that all tied in right. Obviously, before when William was leaving, Felicity got a phone call,
Hmm.
and she was going, "Oh, you're going to tell me it's gone to my liver now or something."
Yeah.
She went, and then she just looked over at Oliver, and then we went flash forward again.
Wait, no, she went, I'm what? And then as she said it, she put her hand on her stomach, and then it
I didn't see
flashed
any of that.
forward.
And then I don't know what. How did she reveal who she was to the boy? What made her say it? Did she say she was also looking for her because she's? No, I wouldn't kill her because I am.
She said that her name was Mia. She said that basically that Felicity was alive because they had that standoff, and she's like, "You're not going to kill me. Why am I not going to kill you?" And she said, "Because Felicity's alive, and I'm looking for her too. I'm looking for her because my name is Mia, Mia Smoke. Um,
Yeah.
I'm Felicity's my mother, and your father is my father, so that means I'm your sister." And it was just kind of like, what?
Oh, yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it?
So obviously the way they did that cut with Felicity getting the phone call and saying, "I'm what?" putting her hand on her stomach and sort of looking, and then obviously they jump forward and then make the reveal that so obviously she's pregnant in the current timeline, and the child she has is eventually going to end up growing up to be Black Star.
Yeah. Like,
So,
yeah.
so that was a cliffhanger. So all these relatives coming out of the woodwork, because you had obviously Oliver's sister a couple of weeks ago, his half sister showing up, and now you've got in the future William's got a half sister too.
Interesting.
So yes, so lots of family ties, and then obviously Connor Hawke. We've established. I mean, we obviously not talked about this on the podcast, but Connor Hawke is clearly is John Diggle's son. Um, that's when we saw years ago in Legends of Tomorrow when they went to a broken down future where Star City was in ruins and there was a new Green Arrow and it was Connor Hawke. So it's like they're sort of tying together all these bits and pieces. Because I've heard there's rumours, about whether or not Arrow's going to continue. Like there's obviously we'll get another season of it, but like whether they're starting to sort of tie stuff in and wrap stuff up because
It does seem to like they're winding it down.
yeah, and especially when you think about in the crossover, Oliver made a deal with the Monitor to save Barry and Kara, but we don't know what that deal was.
Hmm.
So could it be something to do with his life? And is that why they're sort of edging towards tying things up in Arrow? Because after the next crossover, like at the end of this year, are they gonna finish up with Arrow?
Hmm.
Like, is Oliver gonna make the ultimate sacrifice to save everybody, or something like that?
Yeah, because we don't hear any mention of him in the future,
Hmm.
do we?
No.
Not
We'll have
one
to
of them
see.
has mentioned where is Oliver, have they? It's
No.
just seems to be Felicity they're looking for.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, you got the
We'll have to
thing.
see.
You've got obviously the references because you've got the Arrow Cave and you've got the Archer program. Clearly, Archer, Arrow, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all connected in that way. But yeah, in terms of actual Oliver Queen, the person being around somewhere, um,
They haven't mentioned him.
no.
Hmm. That's what I thought as well. But we'll have to wait and see,
We will, but that's our theorizing, our speculating for the future.
as we do.
But we mentioned Barry, which is a nice little segue onto this week's episode of The Flash.
Yes. Yeah, that was quite cool. So it started basically. They finally made the potion.
Yeah, because Cisco was in a lab, was in that
Happy as Larry.
the lab that belonged to Caitlin's dad,
Yeah.
and then he cracked it, and he was really happy, but then he went, huh? And he looked really concerned because he spotted something. We don't know what he spotted. And then the next thing, obviously, he'd breached back to Star Labs.
With it, and they said we have to wait 29 days to use it.
And did you think, when he said that, I was like, so that means we're going to be sort of towards, not quite the end of the series, but it's going to be sort of edging towards the end of the series when they're able to actually use the cure?
Yeah.
Because I thought the days thing. But then in relation to that real world stuff, they also did a thing with this episode. It was another one, we've seen them do this before on these shows, where they came up with the plot device which basically allowed for the runtime of the episode. Because, like you said, they had to wait 29 days, and they were like, that's too long, we can't wait that long, there must be another way. And then Sherlock jumped in.
Suggested putting it in the Time Force.
Yeah, take it into the Speed Force, and then you can use it to speed things up, and it should take about 60 minutes. And I thought, just about the length of the episode. That's quite convenient.
By the end, we will have a result.
So that's what they decided to do. So Barry said, Nora, you're in charge. She was like, but I don't know, I can't do this. And he was like, you can, just go slowly, just trust yourself, you'll be fine. So he went off into the Speed Force.
And then Cisco was planning his date.
Yeah.
So out came the Book of Ralph.
Oh, God, I know.
Oh, that was so funny. It was like, oh dear, how's this going to go?
Yes, it was all of his tips on, like, how to be, and he's like, I've done some research. He's like, what, you've been stalking her? And he's like, not stalking her, just all the public available, social media stuff, and the kind of guys she likes, and all of this kind of thing. And he's like, have a look at this, and this will help you. And he's like, I don't need to look at that. And he's like, get out of here. And then he went to obviously walk away, and then he came back and went, and then he looked at Nora, and he's like, don't tell anybody I took this.
But then when he turned up for his date, he looked really weird.
And he was really awkward, wasn't he?
Yeah, it wasn't going very well. He was being an arse as well, wasn't he, really?
Yes, because he was thinking, obviously, this is the kind of guy she likes. She likes guys in suits, guys that are, like, the boss. And he's, like, talking, making stuff up about his job and, like, what's the name of your company? Ramon Industries? You named your company after you? And he's like, yeah. And it's just really awkward because, obviously, he was putting on an act because he was trying to be something that he thought she would like, but as a result, it was coming across not very well, was it?
No. So it's like, oh dear. So then there was Iris doing in her office?
Yeah, because she said she had an article. Crept up on her. She said she had an article to write, so she left to go and write her article, and then Cicada found her and said, I know who you are, Iris West Allen. And
he said she worked with a Flash.
Yeah, and he said you're going to pay. And then it was like, oh no, he's got her. That's not good. But because they have their like distress signal thing, she was able to obviously let everybody know. And that's what obviously Cisco's date came to a very abrupt end because he got the call to say there was danger, and he was like, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to go to get a do-over. And she sort of looked, and he was like, yeah, I didn't think that was going to be the case. And it's like, oh, the date's ruined. So he went off, and then they got the distress call, and then they all turned up to this rooftop where he had Iris tied to a chair. And then he threw his dagger, and it went flying through the air, and then it came back. And...
Oh, that was like a boomerang. He chucked it into the city, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He did that first, didn't he? And then they appeared.
Yeah.
By the time they appeared, it was on its way back.
Yeah.
And obviously Killer Frost got her ice versions of his dagger, but because she wasn't expecting that one to come at her, then that hit her as well, instead, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It hit
Killed
her back. Yep.
And then Nora looked panicked and ran. Obviously trying to run back in time just before the attack.
Did you get... the first thing that twigged me as to what she was doing was when she started, because I thought, where's she going? Why is she running away? It's like, oh, I can't handle this, I've got to run away.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I put running away, exclamation marks, and I went, oh, she's running back in time.
Yeah, no, it was the thing that triggered me to what she was doing was when she ran past those kids, and there was one that's balloon had popped, and and the balloon started coming back together again, and I was like, oh, she's going back in time.
Yeah.
And then she arrived back at the point where just after Barry had left. So then, and then basically, I mean, we don't need to go into all the ins and outs of it. This episode then kind of played out like Groundhog Day. So she kept...
Sherlock was the next.
Yeah, because she tried changing things, didn't she? She was like, don't go home, Mom, stay here. And she obviously kept them there, but then Sherlock went off, and then Sherlock went to the office because he was like, why is she doing this? What's, obviously his detective instinct kicked in.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because he was in the office, Cicada caught him. And...
Yeah. And then when Cisco still not impressed with the girlfriend, and he gets killed this time.
Yeah.
So then she tries to stop it again.
Yeah, so obviously Cecile, she was like the next victim. But it was like no matter what she did, like I said before, it was like Groundhog Day. It's like she kept trying and trying and trying to resolve things, but somebody in Team Flash ended up dying. So it was like no matter what she tried, the outcome was still the same, just with a different person.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, obviously, there'd been these few occasions where we saw Cisco, obviously, with his failed dates that kept going wrong every time. He started vibing, and it's like he was starting to see what had happened. And they clearly they pieced it together because after, and it was again, and there was, they like throwing this reference in these shows quite often, where it was the 52nd attempt, so 52 times, which ties up with the DC 52 multiverse and all of this lot.
Right.
Because they throw that in there every so often. It's always this number 52, and it's because it ties in with that's how many worlds there are in the DC multiverse and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
So when she came back from that attempt, they realised what she was doing, and they were like, you're going back in time, aren't you? And then she had to obviously reveal, I can't fix it. I keep trying, and the same thing happens. I move things around, same thing happens. I get people in different positions, same thing happens. It's like no matter what I try and do, it still plays out. And they were like, oh, maybe it's one of those fixed points in time thing that, it can't be changed and all of this kind of thing. And she goes off really upset. Cisco obviously comes and speaks to her and then gives her a pep talk and makes her, like, happy again and makes her realise that if they work as a team, then they can, they can work out a way to do it.
Oh yeah, that was cool because that was that bit where it was all like people, they sort of appeared and they went back into the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool. I can't really describe it. You describe it.
She'd been making notes, hadn't she? She said every time it's happened, I've made notes.
Yeah, she's written everything down in a book. Yeah.
And they said, well, that gives us an advantage because we basically know everything that's going to happen, so we can prepare for it. So then the next thing you see the scene play out again, and you see Cicada going around in the office, looking at the photographs and all of this lot, and then he goes out, hears a noise, goes out on the roof, and Iris is there waiting for him, and she basically says all of the dialogue that he's been saying to her, she says it to him, and he's kind of looking like almost like, I was going to say that, how do you know that kind of thing. And then the plan went into action. They basically used all their powers. So, like, Cisco appeared and created some breaches, and Caitlin appeared and used her powers. Ralph stretched, and then Nora ran, so she slowed time down. So when he threw his dagger, they were then able to manipulate everything so that the dagger, the trajectory, because that was the other thing, they'd obviously worked out what the trajectory was of where the dagger was going to boomerang back. It went through one breach, and it went out the other breach. Cisco then, in the slowed down, because she'd obviously done what we've seen before with Barry, where he, like, connected them to the Speed Force so that they could move. So they were then able to breach backwards, like, out of the way. The dagger went through the other breach, and it came out, and it hit Cicada.
Yes.
So then...
Yeah. But then he disappeared.
Yeah, he then went, rah, and he, like, flew up into the air, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, because I was thinking, oh, they've got him down now, they've got him. When Barry gets back, they've got him because they were trying to get him to be knocked out so they could, for a few seconds. But unfortunately, he disappeared, didn't he? So it's like, oh, damn.
So that was that. And then afterwards, they were back at Star Labs, and they were, like, congratulating themselves, and they said, there's no sign of any activity, he's disappeared again, he's gone into hiding again. And Ralph's like, well, maybe he'll think twice before coming after us in the future, sort of thing. And then Barry turned back up again. He's kind of like, hey, guys, what's going on? And they're all sort of like, well.
Yeah.
But it worked. It worked going into
Yeah.
Speed Force. It worked. Then
It's
he
all
had
ready to go now. Just need to get him.
Yeah, and he had a chat with Nora and basically said, she did her best and that, but he warned her about messing with time and about how it can have consequences and it might just be little ripples and you might not notice at first, but by going back in time and changing things, you may have actually changed other stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether that's a key thing that's going to play into something going forward. And then didn't she then, after that, when we saw her then go back to the future and go and see Thorn.
Yeah, she's having doubts about his plan now.
Yeah. And he got really cross
Yeah.
with her, didn't he?
Yeah. Also, Shirley's onto something as well, isn't he?
Yes, that was the last bit. He's like, seems to
He
have...
got the book, all her book, the symbols.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was running it all through the computer with it. I thought, oh, what's he found out?
Well, obviously he'd managed to decode it, hasn't he, now? Because she revealed stuff to them, like in her notebook and stuff from, obviously their plan. He was able to use that information, and he's fed it all into his computer, and it seemed like it was actually working. It was starting to translate it, and that was kind of how it ended, wasn't it? With him, almost getting there with it. Like it's all starting to work now. So maybe in the next episode, we're going to start seeing some payoff from that, and him starting to work out what's really going on.
Yeah.
So all in all, it was a good episode. It was a good Nora-centric episode, and it was quite clever. Like I said, it's like an episode of Groundhog Day with manipulating time and all of that kind of stuff.
But it's clever. Yeah, it was good.
It makes you wonder, like filming schedule-wise. It's like, was that the reason that Barry wasn't in that episode? Was that at the time that he was recording his bit that was going to be in the episode of Arrow that we saw last week when they did the documentary?
You never know. We'll never know.
They're like, we need to come up with a plot that means that Grant Gustin can't be on the set of of Flash this week because he's got to be on the set of Arrow instead.
Yeah.
So now we move on to our final talking point for this week's episode, which is Star Trek. So Star Trek came back a couple of weeks ago. We had hoped to obviously cover it from the beginning, but like I said, technical issues, we haven't been able to talk about it. So in a nutshell, the story so far, we come back, we get introduced to the Enterprise crew. We've got Captain Pike, who is played by Anson Mount, who was Black Bolt in the Inhumans TV show. And obviously I made a joke to you the other week about that and said, we got out of the teleporter and it's like, don't speak because you're going to blow their heads off. So we got him as Pike, and they've done quite a good job, I think, of again tying into the old Star Trek stuff. They had the whole bit where he brought up stuff on the computer and said, look, this is me, read about me. I've got, I'm an open book, I've got nothing to hide. And there was little tidbits in there, clever people on the internet have paused things and found stuff and said, oh, there's a reference to this thing, which references back to earlier stuff with Captain Pike from the old series and stuff. So they've tied it in quite nicely. So we had that, and then we got introduced to this idea of these red bursts that were appearing in space, the mention of Spock, the fact Spock's gone off on a mission of his own looking into these, and there was something to do with a Red Angel that we've seen make an appearance a couple of times now in Visions and also on tape. We also had a check-in with the Klingons, and the fact that we saw Vok, the human Klingon hybrid thing, or Tyler as he's known in his human form. He was there with the Chancellor. They've got a baby. Then they were under attack, and then we saw the Giorgio turned up unexpectedly and killed all of the attackers and saved them too, and basically said you need to cut all ties with family because that's your weakness. There was a twist thing where it was like, oh, she killed them because she had these heads, but then they were replicated.
Oh, yeah, that's awful.
That was a shocking moment, but it turned out those heads were replicated heads, and that he was on board Giorgio's stealth ship for this secret Star Trek, Starfleet, Black Ops unit, and the baby had been taken to a monastery to grow up in secrecy.
Yeah.
That
To appear in a
basically,
play.
that's in a nutshell the sort of the main
Yep.
plot points, and then that brings us on. Oh, and there was also a thing to do with the spore drive. They were debating about using it again. Tilly got infected by, it turned out to be a spore because she was seeing visions of an old friend of hers, and it turned out it was one of these mushroom spore things that had got into her system, and then they took it out of her. And then, that then brings us on to this week's episode. So,
when we had a
go.
woman from Star Trek Enterprise, who he just referred to as number one,
That's right, yeah.
came on the ship. I don't know who she is.
Well, she's the number one. She's his, second officer.
Oh, first in command.
Yeah,
Second in command, but number one when he's not there.
yeah.
Yeah, so she came to see him about what was happening on their ship, was it? And how he was getting on with the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really remember the discussion.
Well,
and then we saw the...
Hold on, wait. The reason she came aboard...
Elaborate.
She had information to do with Spock. They've been analysing data to do with his warp signature and stuff like that, and they were able to deduce a route of where he was going and the trail and stuff like that.
So that's how they found out that where to track him then?
Yeah, so she gave all that information over to them, and then she said she had her own stuff to be getting on with, so she then just left. So she was in it for the first 5 minutes of the episode or something.
Yeah.
And then she gave them the information. They said, right, we'll plot a course. Now we can follow Spock's trail, and we'll hopefully get to the bottom of all of this.
Yep. So we went into engineering, I think it is, and Tilly's demon is contained in some sort of... What is it?
Well, it's
wherever it contains things.
Yeah, containing device, yeah.
And our floss man, Saru, I'm sure he could do a mean floss.
Because he's so lanky.
He's very unwell at the moment.
Well, before that, so they got pulled out of warp by a planet.
Yeah, something's locked onto them.
Because it was while they were trying to follow the trail, and then suddenly something pulled them out of warp, and there was a giant planet thing, a big blobby thing in space, and that... It was
quite funny.
Somehow, Saru had been saying about feeling under the weather, and it coincided with them coming into contact with this thing.
Yeah. And then they all started talking Klingon.
And lots of other languages too.
Or some other kind of language.
That was really weird. They were all of a sudden
funny.
Talking to each other in Italian and Swedish and Chinese and Klingon and all sorts of other things, because it had somehow infected the ship, and it was messing up. It
affected the translator.
Yeah, that's right. So that's why it was
all
out of sync.
Virus. Yeah.
So poor old sickly Saru was called upon and he was getting more and more sick, which seemed like just a cold to begin with. He just seemed to be getting worse and worse. And he came in, and luckily, because he knows everything about everything and he knows all the languages, he was able to understand them all. He was able to do some command codes, which caused the backup translator to come in so that they could all then communicate with each other again.
Yeah. That woman they found on the asteroid planet, where they got that thing that they've now got in the containment area. Yeah. I don't know what her name was. She said she started helping Tilly and Stanhope. Stanex. I don't know. Stanhope got him.
Stamets. Stamets.
Stamets. Okay. Yeah, so she was annoying him, wasn't she? She kept saying, She kept saying, "Have you got chewing gum? I've got duct tape for that." Or
what made me laugh about her was that she was a real kind of street smart, smart talking, I might not be an intellectual, but I know how to fix things and stuff like that. And she was just really snarky and really cocky and stuff. She was very funny, the way she was interacting with him. Just being like quick-witted, quick remarks and quick comebacks for everything. And he was just kind of like, "Oh, you're insufferable. I really don't like you." And she's kind of like, "Oh, I'm sorry," like all this kind of like, "I'm not a." What was she like? "I'm not a vegetable growing something or other," and all this kind of stuff. I can't remember. She was just really like negative about him and about like your type of people and my type of people normally don't mix, but I'm good at what I do, so let me do what I do.
Yeah. But because of that ship thing, did it not? Was it when they were? No, they found out that it was a ship that was dying, or a planet was dying.
Yeah.
This is what was causing all the problems, and it was basically wanted to give asking for help basically, and wanted them to take its information from its planet or ship or whatever it was, so that if the planet or ship destructs, at least they have the legacy of all the stuff that they had on there.
Yeah,
Is it
because
something along those lines?
it was quite a convenient little sort of thing that happened where, because Saru had been getting gradually sicker, and then he basically revealed, "I'm dying. My species, when our gangliae, our things at the back of our neck, when they become grown and inflamed and stuff, it basically means on our planet, we're ready to be culled by the hunter species that lives there.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm entering into. My body's entering into this phase. I'm gonna die soon." And then he talked to Burnham about how he'd recorded stuff, and it was like, so that there's a legacy for things to be remembered going forward, which then clicked this light bulb moment, and it was like, wait, what if this sphere thing, this planetoid, this huge ball of whatever it is in space, isn't attacking us? What if it's trying to communicate with us? And that's why it took over the translator device. It just can't process it. And he was like, "Oh, you're onto something there." So then he said, "I was so blind, why couldn't I see it before?" And he ran some scans, and he said, "Yeah, there's a waveform in there. If we can isolate that and stuff, then we can allow it to communicate." So they went down that path, and it turns out that it was dying, and that it just basically wanted to be remembered. It was obviously the last of its kind or whatever, and it wanted to be remembered, and all of its knowledge for the thousands of years that it had been around wanted to be passed on, so that wasn't lost, so that it being here in this world, in this universe, wasn't pointless. It was like, I've got something for people to know I existed.
But they were on a time scale, weren't they? Because they were trying to follow Spock,
Yes,
and it was like, what should we do? And then obviously, because Pike has a good conscience, he thought, I can't not do this. And Burnham was going like, "It's getting out of our sight. It's getting out." They went, "No, I have to do this first."
Well, yeah, because it was like, that's kind of our
The
mission as
principle of the
well.
matter is like, this is very important. We need to do this first.
Because that's part
And
of
if we
our...
lose the opportunity, we lose the opportunity. So they did that. But when they did that, it affected something. Did it not affect the electrics or something?
Well,
And
yeah, because
Burnham went down to the engineering.
Yes, because they had to divert power in order to be able to...
That's right. She went down to engineering to get them to help with the power thing. And they had explained what had happened, that they had this virus contained. And was that before or after they did that thing to Tilly?
So this was all going backwards and forwards, wasn't it? This was the thing. We had two separate plot threads here. We had the whole thing with this planetoid and Saru and everything with the rest of the crew, and then you had the stuff in like the engineering area and stuff with the engineer woman and with Stamets and with Tilly and the mycelial fungus thing. They realised obviously it was doing more and more to her, so that because that's right, because it attached itself to her.
Yeah, so she had to be contained in the thing with it because it was attached to her arm.
And it was getting more and more control of her personality in her body. So they were like, right, we need to figure out a way to communicate with it, because it's trying to speak through her. That's why it's giving her pain, because it's trying to use, again, similar to what the thing was going on in the main story.
Doing,
So he did a trepan, into her skull, in a way to try and communicate with the being, to get it to, let Tilly go. And then she was able to speak and say that, you are a destroyer. You've come and you destroy, and you come in and you come out and you destroy everything, and you don't realise the damage you're causing, which then made me wonder, is this going to be their stepping stone towards getting rid of the spore drive altogether? That they realise they're causing damage to an ecosystem. Every time they jump in and out, they're breaking stuff, they're destroying stuff. And this thing had obviously piggybacked through, and it was there to basically say, you people, you beings think you're better than us, that you can use our stuff and not care about us. That's not going to happen anymore. And they were like, oh, so they're like dealing with that. Burnham obviously said, we need this, and they were able to do certain stuff anyway, without getting into all the ins and outs of it. And they were able to download all this information onto the ship, but they were like on a timer, like you said. They were looking, we've got 4 minutes till Spock's trail is out of range. We've got 3 minutes till it's out of range. And in the meantime, all the while this is all going on, poor old Saru is just, he's on death's door, literally, isn't he? And he said, I need to go to my quarters. And you had that really sad moment where they had the bit where they showed all the different people on the bridge all standing up and looking at him. And it was like they were saying their goodbyes. They were like showing respect.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, I was sat there thinking, they're going to kill him.
I know, I was thinking, no, and she had to help him, didn't she? He said he wanted her to help him die, because he had to, when he was ready, he said those gangly things had to be cut off his head.
Yes, that's right.
So with a special knife, and then you notice when she went to do it, she didn't even touch them, did she? The knife just it hardly got in contact with him.
Yeah.
And then they started dropping off, and he was thinking, she went, but I didn't do anything.
And
then he realised. What did he realise? He said that basically that wasn't because of the. You explained, 'cause I wasn't quite sure.
Well, basically, what it appears to be is that everything his species have been taught is a lie. So
yeah, he had an awakening about his own species, didn't he?
Yeah, that they obviously, in their society, the moment that happens, they then go to get killed. They never know what would happen next. That none of them have ever lived long enough to know, what if I didn't? What if I didn't accept my destiny? What if I didn't just allow myself to be slaughtered? They've just always accepted this is what happens. That means it's our time and it's time to die. But because of the extended period that, it was pushed far longer than it probably would have been if he'd been on his home planet, it meant that his body was able to go on to the next phase. And these things fell off. And he was like, I don't understand. This changes everything in my life. It changes everything for my species. The fact that we've been lied to, we've been led to believe this is our lot in life, but it's not. It's like, and he said, I now feel this sense of relief. I don't feel afraid of everything anymore. I don't feel, like I'm on a limited time frame. But he's like, but I don't know what to do, because obviously the directive of Starfleet is not to interfere in the evolution of other planets. But at the same time, if his whole species has been led to believe a lie, then surely it's his responsibility to go there now and tell them, look, we don't have to live this way anymore. You don't have to offer yourselves up as lambs to the slaughter because you feel that, evolution has made it that once that happens, it's our time to die.
Yeah.
That's a lie.
So
so now that's going to be interesting how they move that forward.
I was so happy, though, he was still alive, because I love him.
Me too. I was getting really
Yay, Saru's still alive!
I found myself getting really. It wasn't on the. The other things I watched make me cry. This didn't make me cry, but I was sat there quite emotional, kind of going, "Oh,
yeah.
I don't want him to die." So I'm so glad that he didn't. So
yeah.
So they were able to resolve that. They were able to download all the information of this creature, and then they were like, "We need to get out of here because it's going to blow up." And then the thing, they got flung away, and they were like, what happened?
Yeah.
And it turned out with its dying breath, the being
pushed
had
them away from
pushed them to safety.
Yeah. And by doing that, they caught track of Spock's ship still.
Well, not sort of. What happened there? So you had that's kind of jumping to the very end. So you had the whole thing where that happened, and no, it's not the very end. The very end was this other bit with Tilly. So they turned out when they were interpreting some of the stuff that came through, and they said they'd lost Spock's trail. They'd spent enough time there, they'd lost Spock's trail. But the orb thing that had been viewing everything, it had seen him go by. So they were able
That's
to
right.
plot a course based on the information they received from this orb being.
They could pick him up again at
Yeah.
some point.
So although they
Yeah.
lost his warp trail, they now know the direction he's heading. So
Yeah.
they're able to resume their
All
course.
wasn't lost in the end.
No.
No.
And then we go back to...
Meanwhile, in engineering...
So this thing, they obviously was like, oh, I'm going to, do this and you're going to pay for what you've done and stuff. Yeah, there was like a weird pod thing on the ground, wasn't there?
Yeah.
It looked like a sleeping bag.
Well, she was in it. They got her out of it, didn't they? They pulled her out of it. They said she's inside it.
Yeah.
They got her out of it. And then that happened just a little bit before, just after Saru's dying.
Yeah.
I put the Jamaican demon has overtaken Tilly.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, then at the end, she'd literally gone and they looked inside and she wasn't even in there.
Yeah, it's like taking her.
But she was in somewhere.
Well, she's in the whatever it is, the network that they travel through when they
Yeah, because obviously we saw her then, didn't we, ourselves?
Yeah.
But what? Where is she? Oh my days!
So she's been kidnapped and taken into the Spore network.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this might be their way of resolving this thing of why this technology doesn't exist in any of the other Star Treks. They may now have a way out of saying, look, we can't use this ethically because we're an ethical organization and stuff, and we can no longer use this because every time we use it, we damage and destroy part of an ecosystem, and we can't be a part of that. And that will allow them to decommission the Spore Drive once and for all, and it will go out of existence, and then it will make sense as to why that doesn't exist in Star Trek going forward. That's what I think. That's my theory. This is how they're resolving that issue to tie it back in with everything else, So it'll be like, this is why it doesn't exist anymore. But in the meantime, they've got to figure out a way to get Tilly back first.
True.
So yeah, so that sort of was where we left things. So they're going to resume their search for Spock, and I hope that they don't take too long doing it. I don't want them to drag this out all series and then it ends up we don't get to see him until the very last episode or something. I would be a little bit annoyed if that happens, but
yeah,
we'll see. We will see. So I mean, there's been a lot of negative backlash, like last series and obviously this with Star Trek.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are sort of this, that, and the other. But personally, I enjoy it for what it is. I like it for what it is, rather than any sort of people's agendas or social messages or or worrying about where it connects to the canon. The thing is, I think that they'll work out ways to connect it. Like I said, my theory with the jump drive and the Spore drive and stuff, I think they'll work out a way in the story where they can put it out of existence, which then means, now that's why it doesn't exist when we get to the Captain Kirk series and the Picard series and stuff.
Well, yeah, because he was thinking of not doing it anymore and not being in it. He was going to leave the ship at one point, wasn't he? So
yeah,
him not being there, they wouldn't be able to use it anyway because he's the only one that can go in it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're definitely thinking of the way it was seeming that as if they're phasing that bit out, they'll phase it out or some. Obviously, with the Tilly thing now, I think that's probably will be the turning point, probably.
Yeah.
So then there was something that happened that didn't happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Or in the past.
Yep.
In the future, in the past, I don't know where are they future or past?
They're in the past.
The past, yeah. So yeah, some people just get too nitpicky, don't they?
Mm-hmm. But there's an interesting observation, obviously, I made to you the other day when I was talking to you, like, off recording, about the funny little similarities this year between this season of Star Trek and this season of The Orville, where there seem to be little things cropping up that it's like, oh, this is similar to something that happened in Star Trek, or, and all this stuff. So it's quite funny that they're sort of on a parallel course. Because it's like...
I realised...
Was it... I'm just trying to remember whether it was... No, it was in this episode, wasn't it? Was it the bit, where they were all sat around the table when Saru was developing his cold, and you had the like lizard-like alien, and they were kind of making jokes. There was this whole bit where he sneezed and he said something, and he was like, "My cold's worse than your cold," and all this kind of stuff. And I went, "Oh, I'm watching an episode of The Orville," because it was it was very not like Star Trek Discovery. It was like slapstick comedy, where they were like bantering backwards and forwards between the characters. Yeah, so, well, I mean, that basically covers it. I will say quickly now to everybody listening at home, if it seemed a little bit disjointed at certain points, it's because we've had issues again today when recording. My laptop just keeps turning itself on and off, so we've had to record all of this in chunks, and then I've had to sort of edit it all together. So hopefully it doesn't sound too bad, and we've managed to cover it, so hopefully it was all right. But yeah, apologies if there's certain points where it just seemed to jump or a little bit disjointed. We've done our best, and hopefully it'll all be resolved properly for the next one. But I think that, we've covered everything now, so I think that's time for us to call it a day, Mum.
Yep, indeed it is. And hopefully onward, and we can add in Orville next week, because obviously it hasn't been on in time for us to do this recording. So,
and Supergirl.
And Supergirl will be back, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, yes, we've got that. Add that on to next week's.
So, yeah, so it'll be a bit of a longer episode next time because of those extra programmes. But yeah, so if you have enjoyed this, then please let us know. Please like the video, because that's really good, and YouTube loves that, and we love that too. Comment, because that'd be fantastic. And, we're still looking for, if you think we should come up with alternate names for the podcast, so let us know that. And also subscribe if you haven't done already, and keep an eye out for the next one of these. Hopefully it'll be on a weekly schedule, but, bear with us just in case, because of technical issues, until we get that resolved. It may be a little bit infrequent, but we'll do our best to get it to you in a timely fashion. So, thank you very much once again for joining me, Mother.
That's been a pleasure, my son.
It's been good fun, good chatting to you and getting your take on various things.
Yes. Well, I've been waiting, and we've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm glad we finally got to do the recording of it.
Yeah.
It's like, can I throw my notes away yet? I'll find a new exercise pad now. But thank you again to everyone listening, and I look forward to hearing me again next week.
Right, well that'll just about do it. So thank you for joining us, guys, and we'll speak to you all on the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.